Greetings, YouTube. With the news cycles being what they are in the world today, terrorism is pretty much something you hear about every single day. You just can't escape it. Which got me thinking, how often have we used terrorism in role-playing games? Both in, well, actually in any genre, but in the real world, in super games, in science fiction, post-apocalyptic, fantasy. When have you used terrorist organizations and act of terrorism? As I thought about it, I realized that I don't think I've ever used it in a fantasy setting. The political structures have all been more between equals, and there have been covert operations, behind the scenes kind of things, maybe saboteurs, but they're always kind of attached to a military objective, part of a military organization. They weren't asymmetric warfare, if you will, which is essentially what terrorism is. It's part of an asymmetric warfare strategy. And so I realized I've never really used it in fantasy. Now, I have used it in supers. I've used it in moderns, espionage type stuff. And I know I've used it in post-apocalyptic games. Specifically, I've used the Red Hand of Death, the Red Death, in Gamma World as a pure force of chaos, essentially trying to end the world. And their efforts to destabilize enough of society to begin a cascade event, where if they can break down enough of the social constructs and the internal infrastructure of society, that they will eventually push society to the point where it cannot recover. That's their goal. They want to finish what the war started. They feel that the war should have gone to its logical conclusion, and because it didn't, they need to help it along. Obviously, these people are not well balanced. They are essentially death cultists, and not just that they want to die themselves, but they want to take everyone else with them. They want to eradicate life itself, or at least sapient life itself. Some may have some very twisted altruistic purposes behind it, like, let's wipe the slate clean and let try something else, try to evolve in our place. Some are just out for the power trip and the destruction. And some, of course, are being manipulated by other organizations to do their dirty work. And those other organizations don't actually want them to succeed, but they are useful tools in a larger game, if you will. But that's pretty much how I've used terrorism in campaigns. I've never used it long term. It's always been fairly short term, with the exception of the Red Death, and their record is spotty. They're inefficient quite frequently. A lot of the times their groups are not well organized. They have a difficult time staying focused in many regards. They don't have quite the zeal in some ways, the dedication, because there's such a wide range of members, and it's so difficult to control them. But a lot of the times they get in their own way, which I guess is really good for society at large, that they're not efficient. If they were efficient, things would go even worse. So that's how I've used terrorism in role-playing games. So I was curious if you wanted to discuss about how you have used it, or do you want to avoid it completely? Do you find enough of this stuff in our own history and our own contemporary world that you just don't need it to invade your table? That's okay, I don't need this on my table. Some people don't do that. For example, as controversial it is, I want player characters in high fantasy games like D&D and Pathfinder to be the good guys. So I don't want them to be evil alignment. Yes, people may accuse me of being shallow. You're entitled to your opinion. My view on this is utterly subjective. It's what I want, and yours is equally good as mine. So let's not argue about that. So you may just not want to touch that topic. Like, I don't want to deal with terrorism, and I can understand that. I can tell you right now, there are times I really wish that I would get a break from the news, and I can't. It's everywhere. It's every day. And the political ramifications of terrorism are also with us every day, like, for example, the Patriot Act. Let's talk about terrorism in role-playing games. At least it should be a safer topic than having to deal with it in the real world.